Hi, this is Dan here. I hope you're doing well today. In this video, I've got 10 bass guitar tone tips. Now, we'll start off in no particular order with how the bass guitar is set up. I like to do things like that, little intricate movements. And bass setup is quite a unique thing. You'll have to work out what's good for you. But in order to do that, I've got strings that are 45 to 105 gauge. And the action on the bass is low without getting any fret buzzers and string noise, which I don't really want too much of. So it's a little bit of a compromise here. And the 2 points that you want to learn how to adjust are the truss rod. For me, that's accessed up here. And that keeps some relief in the neck. And the bridge saddles here with some little Allen keys that will be specific to your bass. They're not the most difficult adjustments to make. And once you get a handle on that and what you like, then you can set up your bass. Loads of players like a higher action because it just sounds fat and warm and the strings really ring out true. But then in that setup, perhaps it's a bit more difficult to do the kind of intricate stuff that I was doing. Victor Wooten uses very light gauge strings, 40 to 100 or even lighter, and low action, and that facilitates all these kind of intricate techniques. Know what the different bass pickups sound like. This is a PJ. If I solo the front pickup, this is the precision one here. And then here is the jazz one. I usually use this for YouTube videos and I have it set up bang in the middle. But let me show you an actual P-bass. This is a 1968 Fender Precision with flat wound James Jameson strings on. They're quite heavy gauge. It's just got a volume and tone knob. You can really darken things up. A split coil Fender Precision style pickup has that sound. It's quite dark, it's quite full sounding. Let's go over to a jazz. This is a 1975 Fender Jazz. Now this has got two single coil pickups. You can control each, so it's a little bit more versatile really. You perhaps lose a bit of the round, warm sound of the P-bass, but this would be the front neck pickup soloed. This is the back pickup. Lots of mid-range there. Both pickups together. Quite a good slap sound there. And then you've got a tone knob. So pickups and onboard tone controls really are something that you want to get a handle on. Let's look at a Music Man Stingray now. This bass has one humbucker, plus it's got a 2-band onboard EQ, so I've boosted some of the treble and the bass on that, and you get a really punchy sound with this. The different basses here, they make me want to play in a different way because of the pickups, really. Well, that's one of the reasons. I mean, there are neck considerations as well. Like the Jazz has got a chunkier neck than the Precision, which is quite unusual. But this bass just makes me want to play funk. And in part that's down to this very punchy, very full sounding pickup. It doesn't hurt that one of my favourite bass players, Bernard Edwards, had one of these too. But certainly understanding a little bit about the different pickups that are available on bass, and there are more than those ones I've shown you, that's going to help you get closer to the tone that's in your head that you want to create. There's a really great Brian Bella bass guitar tone DVD that I got years ago, and he talks about different shades of bass tone, you know, dark and bright, and I think about that a lot too. Now, there are two camps of people. Some people say that tone woods, such as a maple neck like this, make a bass sound brighter, and other people just say it's complete marketing speak. Whether it is or not, I think it probably does have at least a tiny bit of influence on your bass tone, but it's the strings, it's the bass wood, and it's very much the electrics and the pickups. This bass has quite a lively, resonant, aggressive, raspy tone. I like it for quite a lot of different styles, but it's a very good rock bass, at least for me. I'm going to jump back over to the P bass and I'm going to play you the darkest tone I can get, and then I'll give you another bass that's got a bright tone. Right, so Fender Precision, split coil pickup, flat wounds, and the tone rolled off. That's about the darkest tone I can really get. Now if that's too dark, you can put the tone back up. that's on the darker end of the spectrum. Now I'll get a Zoot Funkmeister bass with relatively new strings. I'll show you how that sounds. So this bass has a Music Man style pickup, a jazz single coil on the neck, and relatively new stainless steel strings. So all of those configurations are going to make this bass sound slightly brighter. So much brighter than the P bass anyway. So when you're recording or when you're thinking about playing certain styles, there are certain basses that are going to be probably more suited to that style. When I wrote my soul bass book that I have, nearly every single player played a Fender Precision with flats. You know, James Jamerson, I think it was David Hood and Jerry Jamott were the only Fender jazz players. Now they had less choice back in those days, but that tone is synonymous with soul, Motown, R&B. But if you listen to rock players, it's more on the brighter, aggressive tone range. But I think as a bass player, it's good to be aware of that, and then you can sort of choose things. That said, and I'm going to stick on this bass to demonstrate this for the moment, a lot of tone comes from your hands. So if I solo the front pickup and play a bit closer to the end of the fretboard, you get a sort of nice round sound maybe. A walking bass line might be conducive to that sort of style, but then maybe I'll put the pickup a bit closer to the back and I'll now move my fingers to the back. And you can get a tighter, more percussive, punchy sound somewhere in the middle of that, and perhaps instead of playing traditional rest strokes, I might dig in a bit more. And this time I want the string to be hitting the frets a little bit more, and that gives me a bit more of an aggressive rock tone. Palm muting. That really darkens things up. So I didn't actually do anything there. Let's put the pickups equal. It's almost your own EQ pedal really in your hand. I'm just putting the fat side of the palm just at the end where the strings meet the bridge and just finding a nice little spot there. Finger attack, which part of your hands you play with, all of these things are going to have a massive impact on tone. Nathan East has this trick where he angles his fingers such that he can play with a little bit of nail in there. That brightens up the tone again. Back to the Ibanez, we've got a Plectrum here. I use this 0.73 Dunlop Plectrum. And this just, it changes the way that you play. At least I feel this anyway. If I pick up a Plectrum, doing downstrokes there, and of course a plastic Plectrum is going to sound different to the fleshy fingertips, and that gives you this different tone. So I really would recommend that you discard the fingers versus Plectrum debate and see these just as different tone production techniques. Of course you have slap as well. They definitely have different sounds and different applications. By the way, listen to Bobby Vega play bass and you can see how funk pick bass playing is amazing too. Some of these tips are based on the gear, some of it's based on technique, and this one is more of a gear thing. This is applicable in the studio or live, and it's about gain structure. Now every time I'm moving between these basses, I have to just turn around and on the Apollo here, just adjust the gain so that I've got a bit of headroom and that I'm not anywhere near clipping, which is one of the most horrible sounds in the digital realm. Live, you usually have like a red light on your amp and you just maybe clip a tiny bit of it, but not really into the red a lot, because gain structure is a huge thing in your tone. Which leads me to the next tip, which sounds absolutely amazing on bass, and that's tube saturation. Tube amps of yesteryear were used all the time just because it just gave just a few sort of harmonic saturation overtones on the bass tone. James Jamerson used to plug straight into the Motown desk, and it just had this slightly saturated tone that just serves very well on bass to sit in the mix very well. So if you're recording like I am here, there was the old Ampeg DIs that I don't think they make now. I think Kahn make DIs similar to that. You've got the Ready, you've got what I'm using here, which is a Jules Monique. These are all tube preamps, And the tube section of these, it just adds a little bit of this harmonic saturation, which, like I say, sounds really great on bass. Let me show you this pedal. This is my extremely hastily put together pedal board. I'm going to put one together for the studio, but not quite there yet. But this pedal here, the Tech 21 VT bass, it tries to simulate the sound of a B15 all the way through to like an SVT. So without anything on here, pedal off. You might want to use headphones for this, but if I switch this in, it's a bit overdriven. It's got this saturation here. Now, I'm not playing along to anything here. I'm not in a band situation when I'm teaching you. But if you are in that situation, especially recording, a pedal like this is really good just to add some of that saturation on. Compression and EQ are by far the most common signal processors when it comes to bass guitar. So if you're in the studio or live, I think it's a good idea to understand a little bit about this. Now, if you do go to a studio, or if you do what I do and you record remotely online, actually the engineer tends to want to be in control of that, and they don't really want you to do anything. Also, if you do certain gigs and there are sound engineers, they don't really want too much EQ or compression going on your end. They want to be able to control it. But in situations where you are on your own and you need to add a little bit, I've got here a Cali 76 Origin Effects compressor. Going into this new one, I've only just got it, Bass 10 band graphic EQ by Whirlwind. It's a really great pedal. Okay, so that's nothing. Here's a bit of compression. Now this is very, very subtle, and I haven't really messed around with the settings too much. You can use it to like boost a little bit, but I don't want to push things too far. That's kind of an always on pedal, but if I punch in some EQ, well actually first. This is quite a versatile EQ that's based on bass guitar frequencies. And this is a very, very useful pedal. You can use it to hit other pedals if you need it to have a good frequency range for a certain pedal. If you're doing some reggae, you can boost the bass, boost a bit more of the treble and the bass, sort of a bit like what I've done here. And you can kick it in just for those moments. Or you could just have these two pedals going always on just to sort of enhance your tone a bit. This is a passive bass, which is why that pedal works really well with this bass. But if you've got onboard EQ and EQ on your amp as well, then use those two things subtly, and a compression pedal might help you just even out your tone a little bit. Okay, this next tip is another technique one, and it's just not to play too hard. This is another one, especially in the studio and live. If you're playing live and you're just playing too hard, you're going to tire yourself out anyway over a gig. But in the studio, it just chokes the bass, and the tone doesn't really come out very well, and sometimes you can almost play out of tune as well, especially if you're fretting and inadvertently, you know, pulling the string down a bit too much, you're going to be out of tune. So I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to play, but I really recommend a light touch, because in the longer run, you're going to avoid injuries, carpal tunnel syndrome, repetitive injuries, all that kind of thing. So I'm really not straining too much to play that. I'm not pushing too hard anywhere, and I'm trying to be as relaxed as possible. Now watch John Entwistle clips on YouTube, and you'll see him looking really, really bored. And when he's playing, his amp is doing a lot of the work. It's almost like he's a guitarist. He's got really high gain going on. So a light touch a bit like that with a really aggressive distortion will translate to something that looks and sounds like he's playing really, really hard, but he's not. So try to aim for a light touch and see what that does. Okay, last tip. So when I usually use this bass on YouTube videos, I don't use any EQ or compression at all, but I've shown you that today, so you already know about that. But let's go through a few of the most common bass guitar effects there are. So I'll keep the compression and the EQ kicked in. Now we have an octave pedal here. That is just a classic bass sound. That's an OC2 from the 80s as well. So that's one of the classics you heard Guy Pratt playing, and Pino Palladino, Tony Levin, all these great players used to use that exact pedal. Then we have here, we've got a fuzz. Now, fuzz, distortion, overdrive, they're not the same. They come in very different flavors. Now, the flavor I'm going to show you here is quite in your face. Okay, so this is a fuzz pedal. This is the Diabolic by Maleko, and it's a Justin Meldal Johnson sort of designed unit, and it's massive. Something like that you need to use sparingly, I guess. It depends what style of music you're playing. If you're in a jazz band, you're never going to play any of those. Probably you won't need any effects at all, actually. But if you're in covers bands and the odd originals group, it's always a good idea to be able to take this bass in different directions. So those are two effects you'll definitely want to check out, but I've got to do a little bit of jiggery pokery now to get a filter pedal in. Okay, so here's the Source Audio Spectrum Intelligent Filter. I love this pedal, so no filter. Probably more used in funk than any other style of music, but you'll hear that in pop music as well. Effects are absolutely not essential on bass. If you don't want to use them, don't use them. If you're in a soul, Motown, reggae, R&B band, then probably just the EQ pedal or the compressor is for you. If that, you don't need that. But certainly other styles of modern music, you may start to need some of those pedals. So you can change the tone of this instrument through pedals like that, or just through your hands, through changing the strings, through the pickups, through all these different things. There are loads of ways of doing it, of course, but I just wanted to do that video just to give you a few ideas. I hope that helped you a little bit, and if it did, please do subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, let me know. Leave it in the comments below. And thanks very much for watching. See you next time.